Helicopters are uniquely challenging in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, even with full sides controls. So how to achieve smooth flight with your Xbox controller or your PS5 controller? Well, in this tutorial, I'll look at some assistances designed to help you out and some sensitivity settings. And then we'll try out some hovering moves and perform, let's hope, a smooth takeoff and approach. Now, if you have no idea what cyclic or collective are, then please check out this video first, and then come back here for the latest settings because some things have changed in the simulator since I made that first video. Now, I'm making these with an Xbox controller in Windows, but everything I show here applies no matter what system you're using. So, let's get into this and let's fly. And this one we'll do at Lugano in Switzerland, Lima Sierra Zulu Alpha, principally because it looks very nice flying around here. Also, the runway is a nice simple north-south runway there, where we've got some markings that are convenient for us to chart our progress, but we've also got these square helipads over here, which are quite good for some helicopter practice exercises later. Let's just start up with clear skies, or at least light clouds, and we'll do it from the northern end of the runway here, so let's go. And I've chosen the Huey for this because, yes, it is a big and heavy and reasonably stable machine, just inherently, but also it's just so awesome. So let's hop inside. Now, let me get this started with a look at what assistances MSFS 2024 has available to you as a helicopter console pilot. So what I'm going to do is hit the menu button on the controller, and I'm actually doing this in Windows, so I'm actually going to use my mouse to make this a bit faster. I'm going to go settings, I'm going to go assistances, and I'm just going to show you what I have and do not have selected here. So generally on my videos, all assistances are going to be turned off because that's the way I like it, but for the purposes of dealing with an Xbox controller or a console controller, I'm going to highly recommend that, unless you have a separate set of pedals as well, that you turn on assisted tail rotor. That's going to make this so much easier. And if you're still struggling to achieve what you see me achieving in this video and you're getting frustrated, other things that you might consider turning on are probably first one, assisted cyclic, which cancels out a bit of your translational movement and sort of resets it so that it's easier to achieve a hover. I find that taking the fun challenge a little bit out of helicopters, but then again, if you're learning, why not? Just turn it on if you need it. The other one is the assisted collective, so it can... For me, I find it just fights me a little bit too much, so I prefer actually to have that off. The other one here is vortex ring state protection, which stops you from descending too fast into your own downwash. But again, I find that I end up fighting it a bit too much, and also the way things currently stand in MSFS 2024 in early 2026 is that vortex ring state is kind of pretty mild in the simulator, so I don't think that it's strongly demanded anyway. Now, some people have better luck than me with assisted controller sensitivity. Please tell me in the comments if you like it, and I'll be interested to hear your opinion and your experiences. But for me, I'm not really finding it makes a whole lot of difference, so I'm actually leaving it off, although by all means try switching it on if you're still struggling with the controller sensitivity. So that's the way I'm going to do the video with those settings there. So what's the next thing to look at? The controller setup and the all-important sensitivity. So to get into this menu, which is can be accessed from within the flight and therefore a slightly different place, we bring up the sort of the in-flight menu, and the way we do this is by holding down the right bumper and pushing in on the left stick to get this effect here. So we can navigate around like we've got a mouse. But do you know what? Again, for the purposes of making this a bit faster and easier on my Windows computer, I'm going to use this to get up to, that's the button we're looking for there, the controller, and this gets us our control menu. So those are the devices I've got plugged in there. If you are using different devices for different things, like you've got a yoke or something, then I actually suggest that you might want to unplug that or disable it for the purposes of helicopter flight. I see a lot of people getting into strife with things like controller conflicts. So I happen to have, for my system, a USB hub which has switches on it for each input, and I can just turn off the things that I don't need. So I've just left this very simple. I've got, well, the Tobii eye tracker is still plugged in, but I'm not using that today. The controller is what we're interested in, of course. And so when we select our controller, we then start to see our presets configuration. So we've got 3 sets of presets. I'm not going to be too concerned with general today. Those are your very general controls. I'm much more interested in specific helicopter controls. But before I get down there even, I'm going to show you in this cog here next to your controller, we do have some hardware settings. Now I've left these all pretty much linear because we can control the sensitivity a bit later. That means that I can have separate sensitivity for things like navigating the menus and then the actual flying. So we'll get to that. So I've left a little bit of dead zone right in the middle of the stick. There's a left and right and an up and down axis, and that means that you will just sort of cut out any jitter in the middle of the range. I might just sort of indicate that, you know, when I release the stick, it can sometimes just land in a slightly different place. So maybe having a little bit of dead zone in there is going to help get rid of a few unwanted inputs. Alright, so let's start to look specifically at some of these helicopter controls. If I click on search by input and then deflect the left stick left and right, then I can see that that is set to the set cyclic lateral axis input. And so in here I can click in and we see that by default we've got a device input curve override turned on with a separate action curve for this. And so that's what they think might work for you by default. I propose that this is far too sensitive still. So I don't mind the dead zone in the middle, that's fine. Maybe that's a little bit too wide. I'm going to put that down to 0.1 there on the dead zone. As soon as I make any change at all, it says that I'm going to need to duplicate this profile with a new name. So I'm going to call it helicopter tutorial. Normally I would call it helicopter all. But I'll just use this for this purpose. I'm going to apply that to all helicopters so that I don't have to choose it each time, which is very convenient. So, okay. Now, I think that I'm going to highly recommend to you to put in quite a lot of extremity dead zone. In fact, well, that might be too much. Let's try 0.4. 0.4, if I can get it right there. That's close enough. So, what I'm doing here is cutting out a certain amount, about half in fact, of the controller output's potential, right? So you might go, but I need that. That means you're cutting out valuable amount of control input into the machine. Well, the thing is, we don't ever fly like this in helicopter. That would be incredibly dangerous if we were having to move our cyclic stick all the way over to the left. So what I like to do is put in quite a lot of extremity dead zone into my console controller. And this sensitivity here, I'll show you what it does by putting it in a bit more. It just means that you get a bit more resolution in the middle of the range. I think 0.5, which is where it was fine. It's going to go back to 0 now, isn't it? So 0.5, we can leave it on there and see how we go with that. Now, I need to remind you that you have to do this on both axes. So that was the lateral, and so I go back, and now I search by input. I go up and down on that same stick. You can see the helicopter jumping around in the background. Go into here, tweak the action curve once more, and 0.5, 0.5. I'm going to take this dead zone down a little bit here, and I'm going to move this up to 0.4. So now I've duplicated that across both the axes on that stick. And another one that you might want to think about is the left and right triggers. So here's the left trigger, which we can see is on the rudder axis left. So I can, once again, this one is not being overridden. That's interesting. So why don't I just override that, tweak action curve, and we will just introduce some significant sensitivity in here. Actually, that was the wrong way. So we'll go minus 0.5 on the other one. In fact, only one of these will work anyway because it's one direction only. So we'll go minus 0.5, that's close enough. I think I'm fine with that. We can actually see that works. That's good. And the other one was the right trigger. So go back, search by input, right trigger. And now I get the rudder axis right. And we're going to override that. And we're going to tweak the action curve. And we're going to go minus 0.5 again. Only one of these will make any difference, but it's all good. Minus 0.5. I don't mind having the whole range there. And that's going to be a little bit easier to control. Just about ready to start flying then. And in the top right, you can see an input viewer. So when I move my left stick there, the cyclic, you can see the input going there on the input viewer. Now the input viewer is available for free from flightsim.to, but it's only for Windows, so it won't work unfortunately on Xbox or PlayStation. So sorry about that, but I do include it in this video so you can see how much, or actually more accurately, how little input I have to use, even with the sensitivity reduced. So with that extremity dead zone in, I'm going full left there on the stick, and yet you see it's only going just over halfway on the grid there. Alright, so with all of that done, let's try to get up into a hover. And the Huey for lifting off needs some aft cyclic and a little bit of left cyclic. So I'm going to put it about there, and I'm going to now start raising the collective. You can see the collective coming up step by step as I press the A key. You can see it coming up on the graph there, and soon we're going to see the helicopter starting to get light. There it is now. A little bit more aft, and now I've gone a little bit too far, so let's just counteract that and see if we can achieve a hover here. I've had to make a couple of adjustments there on the collective. We sprang up a bit too fast, but then we've kind of fixed it. Something that you might find useful when trying to hover here is to just tilt your view down a bit with the right stick there, so I can see down a bit better. That makes it a bit easier. And so your challenge when hovering is to cancel out unwanted translational movement, left, right, fore and aft. So we're drifting to the left, to the right now, so I counteracted with a bit of left, and then put it back into the center. So apart from that initial move on the collective, sorry, on the cyclic to so that we wouldn't drift backwards too much, I've hardly, you can see hardly, it takes hardly anything to move it from that position there. That's all it takes. It's just a millimeter or two, and it pays to be quite smooth and soft whilst trying to maintain this hovering attitude here. Use a soft gaze, look down the runway, look to a distant object. Try to keep that stable whilst you use your peripheral vision to judge your speed across the runway or your takeoff or your helipad, whatever it is, beneath you and to the left and right. So I'm pretty happy with that. Let's start to move to take off. I'm just going to let the nose come down a bit, and I'm going to raise a couple of steps of collective, and we'll just reset that view up a bit more. We don't take off vertically, we get ourselves moving forwards first in a single engine helicopter. I've not had to use the paddles yet, the triggers that is, to move left and right, because the tail rotor assist is working nicely for me at the moment. Alright, maybe a couple more steps of collective, because we're all looking very successful right now. And we're just going to do a little left-hand circuit here and start to introduce to you what we need to do, or what we could do with trim. So trim stops us from having to do constant inputs on the cyclic. So at the moment, if I just let go of everything, the helicopter's rolling to the right. So either I can lean on the cyclic to the left the whole time, or I can introduce a bit of trim. And the way to do that with the Xbox controller is to hold the right bumper and then move a couple of steps left there on the right stick, and we'll just go back there to counteract some of that. Very fine movements required only. And you can see there's a tiny X in the input viewer which indicates the current trim position. I'll just fake this for a moment so you can see the X there. The X is just very slightly over to the left. And now I can almost take my hands off and just let it do its thing with a little bit of trim in there. So we are hanging left skid low in the Huey. Just maybe just bring back the tiniest millimeter of trim there, and it looks like we're okay. So we want to get up to about 2,600 feet here, and then I can safely clear the hill to our left. We're going to do a left-hand circuit here. Start turning now. How are we looking out there? Just don't want to hit that hill, that's all. So we're going to do okay. I think if we continue climbing here, we're climbing at just under 500 feet per minute. We can add another step of collective there on that with the A key. Gentle bank around here. The turn coordination, which we judge with this balance ball down here, is largely taken care of for us with the tail rotor assist. So we'll just keep coming around here. We're doing fine. And I can possibly start to lower collective now because we're just about 2,400 already. Looking quite nice here. So starting to lower the collective slightly. And we're looking just fine there. Look at this beautiful scenery. This lovely stable helicopter flight. Alright, so let's just roll back out here. There's the runway. And we'll just try and trim it out here as well. We're wanting to go nose up at the moment, so bump it in. A little bit of right stick down. Then hopefully, maybe that was too much. I mean, you could just about steer it with the trim. I mean, that's not how you would do it in real life. You could just about steer it just by using these very small movements. That was too much, that one. Very small movements there on the trim. I'm pretty happy with that. So we just proceed downwind and we will do a left turn to get onto a left base for that same runway we took off from. Alright, there's our runway at about our 8 o'clock now, so let's get this turn in to get to base. I'm going to lower a couple of steps of collective there, and we will start to descend, or start to lose speed. Talk a bit more about that as we get onto the approach. So banking left gently, just holding. I mean, look how little motion is required on that input viewer. I'm just doing the gentlest little lean on it to achieve this roll and bank over to the left to get ourselves onto our final approach for that runway 19er. And this is looking pretty good. There it is there, making this a bit steeper. $80 knots right now, and I'm going to aim for the main landing zone. I'm circling it now. We've got 4 white PAPI lights, which means that if we were in fixed wing, we'd be kind of high right now. But that's okay, we can do pretty steep approaches in the helicopter, so I do need to counteract now with quite a lot of lowering of the collective so that we don't pick up speed here. And notice that my cyclic now, what we do to get rid of speed, actually, or to control our speed on approach, is to use cyclic fore and aft to control our acceleration and deceleration. So I need to nose up to decelerate and nose down to accelerate. So we're at 60 knots now, that's alright for now. Raise the collective this time. And then your up and down progress is controlled by the collective. So A and B to increase or decrease your rate of descent onto, hopefully, the main landing zone down there. Now, it might help to just deflect the nose slightly so that you can see down the runway, down in that lower window. The Huey visibility, honestly, is not great. It's just not the helicopter with the greatest visibility. Now, what we should also be doing here is resetting the trim. So the trim's hardly any trim in anyway at the moment, but I can hold down the right bumper and click down on that right stick, and we cancel out the trim that was applied. Got a little bit slow here, so just letting it nose down, collective up to maintain our forward momentum down onto that main landing zone. And so even when we're getting ready to touch down here, I'm going to have to be ready to start using my hover skills again. Oh dear. Yep. As we lost that effective translational lift there, it was already moving rapidly to the ground, so I made a mistake there. Effective translational lift means we get a bit of free lift when we pass through about 15 knots of forward airspeed. So I didn't handle that too well there. So when it's easy to exit your hover to gain forward airspeed, it's quite hard to keep it all protected when you are doing the reverse of that, which is what we're trying to do now. Just letting it get down to the ground at this point. And I kept the amount of cyclic in I needed for it to keep its attitude whilst I lowered the collective, and we're down. So just a little bit a little bit further along the runway than what I intended because of that poor handling of going back into the hover, but we did it. So here at Lugano, I had great hopes of using these two small square helipads over here for some Huey practice, but do you know what? Those are really tiny and compared to the Huey, and so they might be better suited to a Cabri. And very good practice for that too, to do 90-degree turns to get yourself around. Let us instead choose maybe this green rectangle here, and I'll show you one more thing that you can do. So here is our grassy rectangle right in front of us, and this is all about combining taxi into our hover practice. And honestly, this is about as hard as it gets with the console controller. So I've got that tail rotor assist on, so we get this quite robotic kind of motion here when I'm attempting to turn the nose about. But what we could do is just try to walk the helicopter around a 90-degree, well, a square would be 4 90-degree turns, wouldn't it? So 4 90-degree turns, in this case to the right, will help us transcribe or outline a square. So what I'm going to do though is each time I get to a corner of my imaginary square here, I'm going to let the nose come up and get rid of our forward airspeed. Then we'll do a turn here where we might lose a bit of height. Oh, those turns are very strange with the tail rotor assist on, but we're getting there, sort of. Moving to the left here a bit, not what I want. Now getting too fast, nose up. Cancel out that speed, we will sink down, add collective. This is... that tail rotor assist is so odd, but you just need to get used to it if you want to use the Xbox controller. I mean, you could try this without the tail rotor assist, but you're just going to be challenged to do a little bit of left pedal the entire time that you're doing this. And it changes by the amount of collective you have. So the more collective you have, the more left pedal you will need in the Huey, or in a European helicopter, right pedal. So I hope these tips have been useful to you to learn a bit more about how to control your helicopters with your Xbox controller or your console controller. I'd love to know how you're going with your PS5 with helicopters, because I've not had a chance to try that machine yet. So let me know how well this video suits you to talk about how we can get the most out of our machines using a gamepad controller like this. Love to know your experiences. For everyone else, I really hope this video has been helpful to you. There's not a lot of content out there for Xbox users or console users in helicopters, so I want to do this once in a while to help you out and to help you get a bit more confidence in your helicopter skills on your console. So I'm all about it, and I'll show you the challenges, and then it's up to you to beat them. So hope I catch you for another video real soon. See you next time. Bye bye.